Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Becoming the Product. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're having a good day. I'm Naya, your host as usual, and I'm here with another special guest. And today we'll be talking about, as product managers, one thing I've come to realize is that feedback is something that we have to, how will I use the word, live with. So you're going to get feedback from your users, you're going to get feedback from your stakeholders, you're going to get feedback from your team members. So we're going to listen today on how impactful user feedback could be and how we can learn to manage it, learn to understand it better. So today's guest is my namesake. When I started following him on LinkedIn, I was like, oh wow. This is a very interesting person, and I'm really happy to have him here today. So without wasting time, my senior colleague, like I used to call them, Mr. Fumnanya, how is your day going today?
Hi, Naya. Day's going good. I think I have to get used to the calling my name your name.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I'll probably just stick to Naya. But the weekend is going good. Everything's cool. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we get into the business of today, could you give us like a brief intro as to why you chose product management and how you got into it?
It's a very interesting thing. I didn't know much about product management until late 2019.
Okay.
And before that, I was actually working in operations for an auto tech company back in Lagos. And before that, I was working as a quality assurance analyst for a pharmaceutical. So, and also I studied microbiology, and so from microbiology to quality assurance analyst, and then I decided that I didn't want to work in the lab anymore, and I wanted to do something entirely different from what I was doing at that time. So I took like a couple certifications in customer service. And after I took those certifications, I started applying for jobs, just to like get some work experience. And that's when I got the operations role at the auto tech company in 2019. And that didn't last very long. I think it was just about 10 months that I worked there because the company decided to downsize. And then, I was supposed to leave. I was part of I don't use the word casualties, but I was part of the people that they let go. But in the midst of my work in Class 45, I decided to take a certification of product management. So, fun fact, I woke up one morning, it was December 2019, and I decided that I wanted to do more things. I wanted to take the next step. I wanted to try a career path that could leverage the current capabilities and skills that I had. I mean, At that time, I could already lead a team. I could already build a collaborative work environment. I was already solving problems, even in my role. So all of these things just kind of like made sense, but I just didn't know what role I could apply to. Was I going to get a customer service manager role? Was I going to step into a higher role in operations? I just needed something. And I was randomly scrolling through Twitter that morning, and then I saw Product Dive, which is a product school in Lagos. They were teaching something called product management. And then I was like, what's product management? Like, what do they do? Like, who are product managers? And so I started, researching. I called Product Dive, and I spoke to the founder. I spoke to Toby, And she was just asking me a couple of questions like, oh, why do you want to take this career path? So I told her every single thing that said previously. And she said, okay, yeah, that's cool. That makes a lot of sense. And I paid for to learn the foundations of product management. It was like a 6 weeks intensive course. But I didn't get my product role almost immediately. Because like I said, I was let go by Caswas 5. So, and it was during the lockdown. So like it was 2020. So I didn't have a job, right? I just had like a severance pay, and that was I just spent those 6 months. I didn't have a job for 6 months, so I spent those 6 months just preparing for the product role that I was going to get. I had not seen it yet, but I was just preparing. So I was learning, I was improving, sharpening my theoretical sense of product management, so that if the practical the job comes, I could literally learn the practical and I could apply all I've learned from the theoretical aspect. So eventually that job came with Seamless HR. I started July 2020, worked on several products before we broke into various product teams. And I was charged with the talent management team. So we're basically building talent management products like performance management, competency, career management, surveys, employee experience and engagement. So we're building like about 5 to 6 products at a go. And we were supposed to get the performance management product out to the market, which we did. And currently that's being used by 700 plus businesses across Africa and some businesses in Asia and North America as well. And so I graduated from being an associate product manager to a product owner when the company decided to go the Scrum team route. So I was working as a product owner, but I was doing a lot of work also as a product manager. It was all combined. And then from product owner, I became a senior product manager, still working, but it still gave me more leverage to really go deep into the strategy of all of the products that I was handling with my team. And I left, and currently I work with Ampersand Energy in Kigali, Rwanda, as a senior product manager. And my work basically is to bridge the gap between software and hardware so that we can serve our customers better. And our customers who are using electric bikes to swap the batteries at swap stations easily and quickly. And it's been fun. So far, so good. Solving such an interesting problem for the East African region. So that's my journey.
Thank you so much. I could actually resonate with the laid up aspect. I got laid up as well. And I spent about 3 months trying to figure out what I want to do before I stumbled on product management.
All right.
Kind of. So thank you so much for sharing that journey. So going to today's topic, I understand that feedback is something that we product managers use a lot. So, and it could come from various sources. It could come from the users that we're trying to learn about. It could come from stakeholders. It could come from team members. So how do you approach understanding and categorizing these different types of feedback, especially when sometimes they might not understand the direction that it's going to?
Well, it is a very interesting question. But I think first off, we need to understand that feedback is like raw data. Sometimes it can be extremely messy. It can be very messy, right? Someone would just come and dump something on your table and just tell you that, hey, you should pick this up, and you're just wondering okay, this feedback is not very concrete. It's not very concrete. What do I actually do with this feedback? And it can be very diverse because everyone speaks a different communication language. the way someone would describe something like, oh, the water is not the water tap is not working. It's totally different from how another person will describe it. So you have two varied feedback, but they have the same problem, right? They'll probably say, oh, I tried to screw the tap's not coming on, and someone will probably say, oh, the pipe is not connected to the tap anymore, and that's a problem. But yeah, everyone is seeing it from different angles, so to say. So, and also feedback is also contradictory, right? Because like I said, everyone has their own idea of what feedback is like, or how they're supposed to give feedback, and they just like dump it on your table as a product manager. And the first approach behind any feedback that you get is to approach this with empathy, because you need to understand what is the why behind the feedback, right? Not just the what. Because sometimes feedback comes across as, oh, we need you to do this at this particular point in time. But it's supposed to come as, okay, like you're supposed to look at it as, okay, what is the problem that we're actually trying to solve? Also looking at the person who gave the feedback, what emotions are they currently expressing? Are there like underlying needs and frustrations that haven't been explicitly stated? It's very important that product manager goes behind the feedback, not to look at the feedback at face value, but to actually go deeper to find out why this feedback was given. What was this person actually thinking about when they gave this feedback? What was the underlying reason behind this particular feedback? Instead, when you understand what the problem is trying to solve, what it actually means for the business, the organization, what it means for the customer, that's when you can now start categorizing feedback in nature. Like, if someone gives a feedback, then you probably it's like a bug issue. If someone says, they're giving suggestions for a new functionality, then it's a feature request. Someone is having like pain points in user experience, then that's probably that's a usability feedback that you need to take into consideration. And then there are the emotional reactions, like the general likes and dislikes. And behind every general like and dislikes, because this is something that happens with product managers, where we generally feel like all feedback is personal. And sometimes those general likes and dislikes, especially the dislikes, can help you reveal deeper needs that you probably were not looking at in the first place. So if someone like from sales team, for example, comes and says, hey, I don't like the way that product actually looks. I don't like the way that feature actually looks at that particular point in time. It's going to spoil our sales records. And we think that feature should not be there at all. In your head, you're probably thinking, this is something I spent 4 weeks working on, and we're releasing it to you guys, and then you're telling me that this doesn't actually, this is useless, and this is not going to help you. Like, I would feel, and human reaction would necessitate that you feel a certain way, that you feel like this person doesn't just like you, and this person doesn't like the work that you do. But what they have a problem with is there's a deeper need, because they're looking at that feature and they're saying this feature is actually going to spoil our sales records. So the question you should be asking is, why do you think that would spoil your sales record? What do you think will be helpful, that would help improve your sales record? Why do you think this feature is not actually really important at all? So all of this is very helpful. And this is how I like to approach things, because it's helpful and it helps me to prioritize what I need to address first and how I would need to approach like future solutions at the end of the day. Because conflicting feedback is gold, right? It always signals unmet needs. It signals a lack of clarity in messaging. It signals something. All you need to do is to focus on the root cause, and then you can now begin to prioritize accordingly.
Thank you so much. You kind of entered into my second question about if we receive feedback, so that we don't take it personally. How to it with a proper mindset. And what you said was true. Sometimes when you receive it, don't look at it like they're talking to you directly. See that an opportunity to dig deeper and understand exactly where they are coming from, because you might think there that you haven't seen before.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, feedback loop, which is basically like iterating based on what you get, is very important in product management. So how do you, or what strategies do you use to ensure that that feedback is not only collected, but you incorporate it when you're working as well and your decision making process?
Yeah, that's great. But before we go into incorporating feedback into product decisions, I think it's very essential to recognize that when it comes to feedback, product managers need to cultivate a growth mindset, right? So we need to remind ourselves, because it's very easy to get defensive. It's very easy to think, like I said previously, that feedback is personal. But what I've learned in my career is to see feedback as a gift, right? Because someone is actually giving you something, but it's probably not wrapped the way that you think that it will be wrapped. So you have the opportunity to harness that gift you have been given to use it, for something better. And every time I always remind myself that it's not about me, it's about the product. And every piece of feedback, right? Even negative feedback brings me a lot closer to understanding who the user is. And also to understand that there is always room for growth, even for seasoned PMs, people that have spent 6 years, 7 years becoming product managers, and to put the ego out of the door, and just come in with humility, just so that you can understand the person. But to your main question about incorporating feedback into product decisions, it's not just enough to collect feedback. Feedback can be collected anywhere else. So like, for example, when someone has a very concrete feedback, I usually, because I like written ideas. So I like it when you write everything out, just write everything you're thinking about and send it to me. And then we can start talking and based on the ideas that you've written out. So when someone comes to meet me and they ask a question face to face, I hear what they say. I'm kind of understanding what they are trying to give to me as feedback. The next thing I tell them is, can we have this written down in our feature request backlog, and then we can start picking it up. And I always make sure that I have stakeholder feedback sessions where we basically can look at that. We can look at that feedback that you've given and can thoroughly understand the problem and the need behind that particular feedback, right? So you can collect feedback anywhere. There's so many tools to help you collect feedback. Even Slack, you can collect your feedback on Slack, hide it somewhere. You can collect feedback on Notion, feedback on Asana, on different product management tools. You can collect feedback from all those routes. HubSpot too is a good. Trello, exactly. Mention any kind of product management software, you can collect feedback through all of those routes. But it's not just enough to collect feedback, it has to drive action, right? This is where it's very important. You collect the feedback, good, but what do you actually do with the feedback? So here's how I typically like to ensure that feedback gets integrated. So the first thing is to close the loop. Always acknowledge feedback. Even if you can't act on it, it's very important that you let the users know that you have heard them. All right, people always bring their needs to work, and if their needs are not really attended to, their egos can get bruised, and it would now be a case of this person did not attend to me at the time that I was expecting this person to attend to me. So it's very essential to always close the loop. Acknowledge that the feedback is good, even if you can't do anything about it almost immediately. Let the users know that you have heard them, right? And you want to, you want to look into it, or you can even just tell them no at that point and tell them the reasons why you might not be able to tend to this feedback. And the next thing that you want to do is to share with the team, right? So we've gotten feedback, yes, but what's the essence of feedback if you keep it to yourself? So a feedback shouldn't live in a silo. You shouldn't just pack your feedback somewhere and just hide it from anyone. Share with your team. Discuss it openly. You can even use the feedback to inform your product goals or your product roadmap or even your product strategy. it's very essential that your team knows this feedback, because they could also have like thoughts on the feedback that was given. They could have better ideas for how to approach the feedback, be it a feature request or be it a bug or an issue. They can have like better ideas on how they can, approach it. That's why it's important to share with the team, so that you can discuss it openly and then come to a conclusion or a consensus. And then you want to track and measure. So this is where I like to prioritize the feedback based on impact and feasibility. So we basically will track how changes based on the feedback affect the user behavior and the business metrics. Because at the end of the day, being a product manager isn't just about building cool stuff. Yeah, you build cool stuff, but the underlying reason why you do this is so that the business and the customer are getting benefits from whatever you're building, right? That's the end of the day. That connective tissue between the business and the customer is not lost, right? Based on what you're building. So the goal is to ensure that in all of this is to ensure that you are creating a feedback loop where your users feel heard, a feedback loop where the team is aligned and the product is basically evolving based on the real needs of the business.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. It was very insightful as always. You mentioned that your team members too, you need to also align them. But how do you create that culture of feedback, where feedback is valued, especially in your team? How do you foster that feedback culture?
So the first thing is not to force the feedback culture. So you shouldn't force it, right? I think personally, if you ask me, it all starts with leadership, right? It all starts with the company that we're working for, right? Starts with management looking at it and saying, okay, we want to build a product that is incredibly good, but we know that we need to foster an environment where feedback is part of our culture. So for you to share feedback, it means that there is a culture of openness and curiosity that has already been established. You can't share feedback somewhere where you feel like your feedback will not be valued. And imagine you come and the way the company is they don't listen to feedback. Everything is a bit toxic. All the feedbacks just die dead. Like they're just dead somewhere, dead in the water. And you have to now, any feedback that you give essentially would not be helpful because of how the culture is like. So, founders, managers, heads of departments need to first off work together to model a culture of openness and curiosity, a culture where you can celebrate feedback. So where you make it clear that giving and receiving feedback is valued, right? Where you're able to create safe spaces that people can openly communicate, where everyone feels comfortable sharing their thoughts, right? Another thing is with trust, and this is something that I very strongly tied to my work. I feel is so important, is the aspect of trust, right? If trust exists within a product team, for example, it's very easy for everyone in the product team to be very open with expressing their thoughts and their feelings on how some things go. It's very easy for anyone to easily just share feedback, even if the feedback is not 100% concrete. It's not the greatest of all feedback, but they are open sharing this feedback with you, right? So it's very important that everyone feels comfortable with sharing their thoughts, because when everyone is comfortable, it means that there's trust, and it means that everyone feels safe to be able to do that. And the other part about empowering teams is very important, because you also need to be able to give the teams ownership and autonomy over responding to feedback and implementing the right solutions to the right problems. Because if you just, if the feedback just comes and says, you must implement it or else, or the feedback just comes as like, you implement it, you have no choice, just implement it, then you're not empowering the team. Those guys will always come back to you when they get the feedback that when they get the feedback from an external source. They'll always come to you and they'll start asking you like, boss, what should we do? Or as the CEO, like, we don't really know what we should do here. Can you guide us or something like that? No. What should happen is they should have ownership over that. They should already know that this particular feedback that has been given is probably not the right time for us to attend to it. It's probably not the right time for us to implement it on our product. So we need to take a chill pill. We need to look at it. We need to investigate further. We need to do more research. We need to ask more questions. Like, really, what is the problem here, right? Before we jump into solutions, right? And then make it easy. And that's something that I don't see a lot in a lot of companies. You need to make it easy to like give feedback, like provide channels for feedback. Make it easy for people to share their thoughts, whether it's your users, whether it's if your colleagues that have feedback on your product, whether it's someone who just randomly popped into your product and we're just looking at it. I was like, hey, I think you guys should improve this, just random from nowhere. Like, make it easy for them to be able to channel that feedback to the right source. Now, feedback essentially is not about fixing problems. That's not why we give feedback. We give feedback so that we can build better products and we can essentially foster a culture where there is continuous improvement, there is open communication, and everybody can work together to get very successful outcomes for the business and for the customer.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Fumnanya. I really enjoyed this episode. Learned a lot. Even though I haven't really started my product management job yet, but I know what to do in these cases right now. So as we come to the end, I usually like asking that, what is one advice you would give anyone that is trying to transition into product management? Just one.
It's a very interesting thing because I was the group mentorship session I was in today, they asked the same question. So they asked the same question. So probably maybe you and the other person, you probably had a meeting to ask me again. But one advice I gave, is still the same advice that I gave today: preparation and persistence. Those are like two things like that I think are extremely important. Because it was the same thing that is my journey, right? Where I learned these two things, like just being prepared, like being ready for the opportunity that is to come. And because typically you see a lot of product managers, like, they would a lot of product managers would say that we're not getting jobs, we're not getting opportunities, and it feels like nobody wants to hire us because we have not started our role. And sometimes that's kind of like valid, because the jobs are a bit scarce. Like, there are not a lot of jobs for interns, for people who just want to start out their journey. Some people start out their journey in a different route. They probably start building, and they're just building and start applying, and they probably get the jobs. But preparation is very important. So I like to put it like this: you should be 80% prepared, and you should be 20% persistent. So 80% prepared in terms of like, opportunities do come, but they can be rare sometimes, right? The opportunities will always come. There will always be opportunities, but they can be pretty narrow. Opportunities are not like very wide, so to say, when it comes to product management. So, but the opportunities are there. They are there. They are a lot, but they can be very narrow. But the most important thing is to prepare. You need to be ready.
To be ready.
Yeah, you need to be extremely ready. You need to be prepared, so that when you get into that interview, when you meet people, and you start talking, people should basically see that you're oozing product management. People should see that, wow, this person actually does know a lot, and if we do give them the opportunity, they could be really valuable to us. You should be able to do that. And what typically happens is, some people skip the prepared stage and just, probably like are sharing content, for example, or they are just they're just applying and applying and applying. Their CV is still the same. For example, their resume is still the same. Nothing has really changed in terms of like their journey. They're not fully prepared. So when the interview comes, it's very easy for you to flop it because you've never been really ready. You've just been, hoping that this job will just hoping that this job will just come and will just appear. And so at the end of the day, you have to make sure that you're prepared. You have to make sure that you're prepared. And if you're not prepared, that would, that essentially would not be that essentially is not going to like be pretty helpful for you when you have those opportunities that come. So be prepared and be persistent. So when you're prepared, start applying. Keep applying. But at the same time, as you're applying, as you're being persistent, make sure that you're being prepared so that when the opportunity comes, they can basically see that, oh yeah, this person can be valuable to us and we would like to work with this person.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all of that. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode just as much as I did. As usual, if you have any comments, if you have any questions, you can always reach out on LinkedIn or social media, or you can send a voice message on Spotify here. So as usual, we'll see you next week. Thank you so much, Fumnanya. Have a good day.
Thank you, Naya. Do take care. Bye.